Hello there, my beautiful book lovers. My name is Camille, and welcome back to my book nook. Happy Black History Month. I am a bit late. I was hoping to do this video at the beginning of February, but I was busy with a lot of personal stuff, things that are going on around the world and here, and so it took me a while, but you can be sure that when there's an important event and celebration, I will be there with the list of my recommendation of the books to read, and so I was like, I have to do this video as soon as I can, which it's very important this year, honestly. I mean, it's always important to read books that are by people of color, people of different cultures, different ages, different experiences. But this year, it is even more important to really listen and read books that are by people who are trying to be silenced, trying to be ignored, trying to sort of gloss over their experiences, their trauma, their past, their future. And so it's really important. And books, that's the greatest things about the world of literature, that it's always and has always been really about sharing experiences and stories. And it does not matter where you come from or where you live. It's more about sharing these experiences. Even if it's fantasy, there's always elements of real world in the world of fantasy. If sci-fi or then we have like nonfiction and everything. So anyway, that's like the beauty of the world of literature. And I felt that this year I have to really do this video as soon as I can. And then I got busy with stuff, and now we're almost at the end of the month, but it's better to be late than never do it, right? So anyway, let's get into it. We have a list of some very interesting books. They are my favorites. There are some that I have really enjoyed in different senses. And so to start off with a very classic and a very, very deep story, really, we have The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. So Toni Morrison, it's honestly, she's a fantastic author to begin with, and any of her books are really just eye-opening and interesting to read, but Bluest Eye, it's one of my favorites, and I actually reread it a while ago. I think it was like 2-3 weeks ago, and I was just so moved, because that's another great things about rereading classics, or any books really. Sometimes when you were reading them at a younger age, you might not really sort of feel a connection there, or you couldn't get the story as deeply as when you reread them again when you're a little bit older. And so that was how I felt with this book. When I was reading it again, I was like, this story is just so fantastic. So the book, it's about this young girl, Pacola, and she is the main character without being the main character. And that's the beauty of the writing, really, because this story, it's told by all of these different characters that are related to her, but you never hear her point of view. You're told this story through all these other different characters, and you really get that glimpse at the end of her point of view. And it's so heartbreaking but also touching, and it's such a moving story. She is a young girl that it's living in this community, and this book, it's really talking about the struggles of the Black community, but also the struggles of young women of this community. And on top of that, the thing is that she is a girl, Pacola, that it's not really pretty, in a sense, that what you can call pretty. And so because of that, she is having some struggles to really fit in. And there's all of these standards of beauty that, especially, I mean, they are still here. Unfortunately, we cannot get rid of them as a society. But there is this concept of the bluest eye, that for this child, she is really following that, because a lot of the dolls back there, the pretty dolls that the girls would play with, had like white skin and blue eyes, and they were so loved. And so she was thinking of like, maybe if she would have the bluest eye, she would be loved, get more attention, and have a better life. And so we are following her journey and her story, and it's a fantastic book. I was crying. I have noticed that I mention crying a lot in these videos, but it's so true, because especially recently, I think for the past like 2 years or so, I have been crying a lot. And I saw this comment on a different video, not related to mine, on Instagram, that like somebody was actually talking about the same thing. That was like, as I get older, I become so much more sensitive, and things touches me so much more and deeply. And I'm like, yeah, I really get that, because I mean, this is a story that, like, of course it is going to move you, but I do not remember crying the first time that I read this book. I was moved, I think, I feel, or I hope so, but I do not remember crying. But this time, when I was actually listening to the audiobook this time, and I was just bawling, because I was like, I feel for her so much, and how this stuff that happened to her changed her life. And that's life for most of us, you know. A lot of times, some tragedies and stuff that happen to us, especially at a young age, it's really hard to bypass it and sort of be able to change our lives after that. And so when the last episode, we are looking at her as an adult and what had happened to her, and how's her life going, and like which level she is at, I was feeling so heartbroken for her. We're not crying now. And so it's a fantastic read. I highly recommend to give Toni Morrison a chance. But The Bluest Eye, I think it's a very wonderful, if you have never read any of her works, sort of a nice introduction. So anyway, that was the first book that I really enjoyed. And then the next book we have on the list, it's actually the Chain Gang All-Stars by, please forgive me for pronunciation, and that was the main reason that I wanted to have this list, because I knew that I'm going to butcher last names, but it's Nana Kwama Ajay Brunaya. We have the cover here, so please just look at that. So this book, it's actually a book that it's sort of a fiction, but it's also a dystopian fiction, and there is this universe, let's say, this world that the elite has. There's this prison, and a lot of these like serial killers and murderers that are there, they have set up this, the government, and like, you know, again, the rich and who are not, created this program that it's sort of like a game, sort of like Squid Game. It reminded me of that in a sense a little bit, that these people will be put into groups, and then they will start to kill each other's till eventually one person will be like the winner, and they will get the freedom. And so this book, it is horrifying. Honestly, I have to give a trigger warning that going to it knowing that it's very gruesome. I didn't expect it to be that much, and it was. And I was able to get through it because, and I enjoyed it, but well, enjoy in a sense of like the book, but it is a little bit tough, because again, like similar to like, again, like when I was reading it, I was like, this is like so much, not exactly, because it is really the bigger picture than what it's talking about, and it's really trying to point out. It is the justice, if we can call it, system in America, and in generally in the world, but especially in America, and the unjust treatment of the prisoner, how they're treated, how the cycle that by the time that you get in for whichever crime, sure, some crimes are so much worse, and like for those, usually, hopefully, you're not able to get out. But for some like petty crimes, when you get into that system, how hard it is to, when you're free, to be actually truly free. And so it is making a comment about that, and it's really showing how for the land of the free, most people are actually in chain, especially because US has the largest number of prisoner in the entire world. And so anyway, so this book, it's a commentary about that in this dystopian world that it seems like becoming so much more real every single day. So anyway, it's a very, I enjoyed this book because it's fascinating to see how there's always that little thing that it will take to make everything just go and become a dystopian world, really. And so if you are looking for a book that, again, has a little bit of element of dystopian, it's a fantastic read for that. But again, be aware that like the whole like the killing and everything that's happening, it is a bit gruesome, but it's a fantastic book. The writing was very beautiful, and you are actually following different characters, again, because like they're in these different gangs or groups that are trying to like team up and like, you know, one by one get eliminated. And so you're following the story of these people and get a little bit of backstory of each and how they ended up here and what they're doing and everything that is related to that. And so anyway, it was a fantastic read. I have recommended it. It's a great book. And then we have, we have Isaac Song by Daniel Black. So this book, it's another tearjerker. This book, actually, first, there is apparently another book that is, well, not exactly the first book. They are related, but you can read whichever orders that you want. So I didn't know that, and I read Isaac's Song. And this one, it's about Isaac and his relationship with his father as a Black gay man. And he always had this issue with his father that there's, you know, that sense of conflict because of him being gay. And so as much as like his father wasn't really abusing Isaac per se in any like, you know, sense, but at the same time he was still not fully acceptable of his son, and there was always that like in a sense of like they were like walking on an eggshell around each other. And then by the time that the father passed away, Isaac is sort of like going through all of these different emotions that he finds himself, that like, you know, by the time that his father passed, he was crying, which was something that he was not expecting because of the relationship that he had with his father. He didn't expect it to be touched that much by his passing. And so we're following his journey and while he's going to therapy. And it was actually very eye-opening for me, even because like some of the advice that the therapist was like giving him, it was just so, I was like, I relate to that, you know, about like our relationship with our parents, with our family, and even with others when it comes to forgiveness, when it comes to moving forward, when it comes to sort of patching those relationships and seeing things from different perspectives and point of views, and how much we give power to others to hurt us or not. And so it's a fantastic read. It's a wonderful book that really shows that it's one of my favorite genre, because again, I love stories that are about families. And so it's very interesting to see that how many variant of it exist throughout the world, really. And so I really, and especially like at the end with the letter, it's a really nice book. It was very interesting to see an experience that it's so different than mine. It's something that I will never feel because, like, it's about a Black gay man and I'm like a white heterosexual woman. So it was really interesting to read that other point of view and perspective, to really see the differences and also the similarities. So anyway, if you're looking for any of those elements, it's a great book. Next, we have Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. This is another fantastic book about families. I read this book last year, 2 years ago. Time has no meaning. Like, I cannot remember anything anymore. It's just flying by. Anyway, this book is about Eleanor, if I'm not wrong, and she is just passed away, and she has left this black cake for her daughter and son, and they are like, they're there for the funeral and everything. They're learning about their mother's past, because this black cake was something that their mother used to make a lot, especially when she was back in the Caribbean. It was a practice there, it was a tradition, and she really loved it, and she brought it with her when she moved. And so after like they got married and everything, so like we're learning really the story of this mother. And it's such a lovely story. It's one of those books that it's not fast, it's not slow, it's just life. And you're reading, and to me it felt really like, learning about your parents, and like to sort of come to this realization that they were someone before you. And it's always like so crazy because like, like for us, like our parents starts from the day like that we were born, but it's like, no, they became a parent by the time that we were born, but they were somebody before that, way before that, and so it's really fascinating to like see these two kids to sort of, and they're not like really kids, they're adults, but like in a sense to learn about their mother and what she went through, and her life back in the Caribbean when it was so much different than the life that they're living, and like everything that went through, and like her mother's friends, and like, again, the community that she had, the grandparents and everything of that sort and nature. And so it's a fantastic read. I enjoyed it very much. The story was very entertaining because this one is one of those that really felt like a family drama sort of a book. Again, it's not that much of a drama, but it was enough to give that sense, and I enjoyed it because I felt it was nice to sort of see that how much sacrifices we make every single day as human beings in general to make the life that we have, and how much it takes to sacrifice more, honestly, when you become a parent, when you're a friend. And so it's a lovely story. I enjoyed it very much. I have not seen the show yet. I will eventually get to it. But there's also a show, I believe it's on Hulu, that I hope that it's as good as the book, but I don't know, so I will not say anything about that. And then the next book, we have This Motherless Land by Nikki May. So this book, I read somewhere that it's sort of a retelling of Mansfield Park by Jane Austen. And let me tell you something, it is not. And I'm very glad about that, because Mansfield Park was actually, if you have seen my Jane Austen video, you know that that book, it's not my favorite, because as much as I love Jane Austen so much, it's so much that I love her, but that book is just, so I'm glad that this book, it's actually not really a retelling. I don't know why they said that it's a retelling. I mean, it has little elements, but it's like, not really. So the story, it's about this young girl that she lives in Nigeria. And so when her mother and brother are killed in an accident, she's sort of sent to England to live with her mother's sister and her kids. And so the story, it's really about her. We're following her, and the story, it's in throughout years that we're like going with her journey. And by the time that she moves to England, again, first of all, she's young. I think she was like 10, if I'm not wrong, or something. She's very young. And so there's like a big sort of culture shock. And at the same time, her aunt is not really nice, and she is feeling very outcast. And the only person that she has, it's one of her cousins. They feel that they're sort of like related more than just being cousin. They really feel this like sibling bond. And so they form this friendship, and we're following them through their journey, and it's sort of like a coming of age story. And I really like this book because, first of all, one thing that I really enjoyed, it was that we see two different culture, and we see them at their best and at their worst. For both of them, you really get the sense that she wasn't feeling that, oh, like where she was, it was the best, and where she's now, it's like, it's the worst, or vice versa. But like, you really see that there are moments that she missed Nigeria, and there are moments that she's happy that she's in UK. And so I really enjoyed that. And the characters, they were very lovely. I enjoyed, unlike Mansfield Park, that there were some that I just did not like at all. I'm sorry, Jane Austen, but I really didn't. For this book, I actually enjoyed characters, especially even like the aunt, like the relationship that they have, as much as like she's not a really nice lady, but you see why she is not a nice lady. And not to say that like you will give her the right, but you can at least, she's a realistic villain. You can understand like why, what made her to become such a person. And so I love stories about that. And again, it's another story about families, because that's what life is all about. And so if you're looking for a book that, it is not Mansfield Park, but it's about one person from two cultures, I highly recommend to read this book. And then we have Mame by Jessica George. This is also another book that I read, I think 2 years ago, this one, because I remember that this book was mentioned in the books that I were really looking forward to so then it's last year, because it is the video of the books that I was looking for 2024, and I read this book. So I think it was last year. So this book, once again, it's about families. This time it's about a girl that is living with her parents, and she's really looking forward to moving out of their house. Not really because of like they're horrible people per se, but simply because she has reached the age that she is in her 20s, and she really wants to experience this independent living and experiencing her first in anything, like going out, having her first kiss, first love, first boyfriend. And so she really is looking forward to that. And by the time that she is like sort of getting that, some stuff happens and she needs to like move back again. And we are following her through this journey, and we're seeing how she's struggling to manage to become the person that she wants, and also keep up with the standards of this good daughter that her parents have from her. And she loves her family, she doesn't want to really disappoint them, and she wants to take care of them and cater for them, but at the same time she's having a hard time to set up that boundary to be like, there's a line that is enough, it's enough. To a certain point you can help, but after that it's like you need to move on. And so I enjoyed that, because this is a book that, even though I cannot fully relate to every aspect of it, there were points of it that I relate to, that I was like, especially as the eldest daughter, there were moments that I was like, yes, I'm also sometimes a people pleaser that have a hard time saying no, and need to like really go through so much and be pushed by so many like friends and other family members to just say no. And so because of that, I really enjoyed it, because their writing is also very beautiful. It's very like realistic and easygoing, and you're able to connect to all of these different characters because, like, you know, they're her friends or her co-workers. Some of them are good, some of them are not, and we're sort of like relating to all of these characters. So it was a great book if you are looking for a book, again, about family and just life. I highly recommend to give this book a go. And I love the cover. It's very colorful and beautiful and optimistic. So it's another plus for that. Then we have There's Always This Year on Basketball and Ascension by Hanif Abdurraqib. So this book is actually a nonfiction. This book and the next one, they're both nonfiction, in case you're looking for something other than fictions about families. And this book, it's about basketball, everything about basketball and sport, but also so much more. And that's the reason that I loved and enjoyed this book so much. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, which is my main sort of finding books to read. I sort of going blind because I like to find sort of like surprises throughout the book. I was not sure if this book is going to focus really just on basketball as a sport, or if it's going to be about anything else. And it is about so much more. It's really talking about, it's a collection of, like, you know, there's like memoirs and like sort of different like statements, if I can say, about how basketball as this sport, it has such an impact on the Black community, especially for Black men to be able to find a way in, if we can say, in a sense that has been one of the very few outlets that has been able to allow this community and these men to really be able to not only make a name for themselves, but, you know, again, to get famous, to get like rich, to be able to have a status that it's better at just be looked down upon as a Black man. Because it's so interesting to see that how some people have so many different outlets to be able to express themselves, to gain fame, money, status, or whatnot, and so many other people, they have such a small opportunities and outlets that they can actually use. And because of that, how much harder it is for them to be able to, like, you know, compete through like many different peoples to be able to get, like, you know, a couple of spots. And so this book, it's really focusing on that, to really show how this sport has affected this community. And it's also like really talking about your sense of identity, that like then who you become through this outlet, what because of your achievement and whatnot. And so I found it such a fascinating book to look at a sport in that way. And I never thought I would enjoy a book about a sport. It's not that I have anything against sport, but it's like, you know, even if when I watch sport, it's really is just for the excitement of like watching the set sport, and not really to like read about, like, I don't know, the theory of it, or how the rules were made, or for what reason, you know, like I'm not finding myself to want to really pay attention to those things or read about them. So this one, because it's a different look at the sport, I really enjoyed it, and I found it a very fascinating book. And I highly recommend, if you're looking for a nonfiction, or if you're looking for a book that really, again, focus about society and the sociology of all of these elements and outlets, I highly recommend this book. It was a very easy read also, because again, I didn't find myself to sort of be bored, because like the writing was very poetic, interestingly enough, because again, like poetry and a sport, you don't think that they will go together really, but they do actually, they really do. And so at least in this book they did. So if you're looking for that, I highly recommend to give this book a go. And then last but not least, I wanted to finish this list with this book because I found it very, it's appropriate and it's nice and it's a little bit different, and it's a great book. And that is The Legacy A Black Physician Reckons with Racism in Medicine by Uche Blackstock. So this book, as the title says, it's about Miss Blackstock. She is a doctor herself, and she is sort of telling us about all of these different experiences that she had or she saw and witnessed as a Black woman, that the things that were happening in medicine and the hardship that Black women especially have, because like in general, a lot of the studies we all know have been done on white men, literally. Like a lot of like medicine has been really specifically done and examined on that one group, and so because of that, the rest, everybody else, it is suffering a bit or a lot depending on how different their physiology is to that one group. And on top of all of that, there's also the racism that it's really still very much in the medicine. And I found this book so, I don't want to use the word fascinating for it because it's really heartbreaking more than anything else, because to see that we are living in a world at this time that there are like events that are happening that you would think we by now have passed and they are so like a century ago, but no, we are still experiencing them. And to me, it was very fascinating to see that how, especially because she was also pointing out that how the practitioners, they also need to realize that some stuff, it is sort of hidden in their mindset simply because of their studies, the things that they have been taught, without them really realizing, because there were cases that like the doctor didn't want it to be racist per se, but their practice was very much so against the Black community and especially the Black woman. And so it is, I love in the nonfiction books that when they are about the society and the issues of the societies, they also have sort of like recommendation ideas or anything of how to move forward, because it's always so much nicer, because at least for me, because I'm like, if like I'm reading a book even about like climate change, I know how bad things are to a certain point, and I know how much worse it's going to get. But when I read a book, I love it when they give you some ideas of what you can do, because you will feel a little bit more optimistic in a sense that you have some sense of power. And so I love books that do that, and this book, it's like that. It has some sort of recommendation, especially for the medical community itself, that how they can bypass this, because again, we know for a fact that the Black women are the worst treated in the entire medical system. And then there are the rest, because like, again, yes, all women do struggle a lot when it comes to their issues with health, because a lot of time they're just told that, oh, it is fine, you know, just drink more water, sleep, it will go away. It's not that serious. And it's actually very much so serious. But on top of that, the Black women, they are the most affected by this. And so this book was very fascinating. Again, because she's a doctor herself. So she was seeing it from two points of view. First, as a patient, as a Black woman, and also as a Black woman who is a doctor. And it's seeing how her peers are treating her community and people like her. And so if you're looking to learn a little bit more about the practices of the medical society, I highly recommend this book. It was really lovely to get that inside scope. And so anyway, I feel I went through this list super quickly. I hope that you enjoy this list and give all of these books a go, because I feel, or I hope, that you will enjoy them as much as I did. And if you have any books that you have read or you want to read, share it with all of us. I'm sure we all would love to know more about books by people of color, by anyone that it's not exactly like us, but it will be beneficial for all of us to learn from them and to teach one another, even if it's just a little bit more. It's always useful. And till the next video, happy reading.